in future. So this is a song that the team has already started working on, and we'll be singing along with it soon. So you can go ahead and nab that on Spotify and get practicing, choir. We're gonna have a good time singing that song together. So many analogies are given of what the church is, and probably one of the most beautiful is that of family. We have a Father in heaven who loves us dearly, and he has a whole bunch of kids, and we get the chance of celebrating together. I find myself these days in a little bit of a nostalgic state with our church family. We've got so many things going on that are what family is all about. This past week, I believe it was, Brandon Davis, who I've literally known since he was 5 years old, and his wife Michelle had their baby, and to see a kid that you knew literally as a little kid having his child is it's really amazing. This coming weekend, Rachel Hershberger, who I've known since she was a bouncing 2-year-old blonde running around the room, is going to become Mrs. Johnson. It's unbelievable, just unthinkable that that's going to happen. And then in a few weeks, if you can imagine this lady's going to be Grandma Dana. I mean, can you imagine that? It is not hard to imagine him as Grandpa, but Grandma, what? How can this be? Anyway, our family gets the chance right now to sing in the presence of each other to our Father in heaven who loves us. Take that spirit with you as you come into the room to sing to God right now. Let's stand.
Lord, we have so many reasons to sing this morning, to glorify your name, Lord, and it all starts with you. God, whether we're in the middle of a mystery, or in the middle of the pain, or in the middle of the waiting, or the silence, or whatever it is, Lord, even in the middle of the joy, God, we have so many reasons to thank you and worship you and bring glory to your name. And Lord, we love you, and we just love that you love us too. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Awesome. We do have a good Father in heaven who loves us. He knows you. He knows you by name. He knows every detail of your life. And the Bible tells us that we come to know the Father through his Son, Jesus. Jesus literally said, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. We're one. And so part of the reason we take time to read the Gospels, to look at the stories, to look at the teachings there, is to get to know our Father better, to get to know of his character, to get to know of his desires, to find out exactly who he is. Today's Gospel reading is found in Luke chapter 10, and Blake Hirschberger is going to be reading for us. Blake has been serving this summer for us as an intern with our students, and glad to have him this morning going ahead and reading this story to us. It's one that's familiar. Hear it, and then we'll talk a bit about it.
As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me." "Martha, Martha," the Lord answered, "you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her."
If you've been around church life for a while, you've probably heard that story many, many times. And you hear it relayed in kind of a scolding way toward Martha. Martha shouldn't have cared about the clean house. Martha shouldn't have cared about getting the meal on the table. Martha should have just sat at the feet of Jesus. And for those of us that tend to be on that task-driven side of life, we'll hear that passage, and we'll kind of get a little bit of a guilty feeling going, oh, we should care more about being with people and less about doing things. And I think when you really listen to the passage, there is one word there that calls it all together, and that is the word distracted. It's not so much that Mary was doing the right thing by sitting or Martha was doing the wrong thing by running around. It's that she was distracted. And the distraction had pulled her attention away from God. I believe it is possible for Mary to have been sitting doing nothing and to be distracted. He's not complimenting activity or lack of activity or condemning lack of activity. He's saying, are you distracted from what matters? And what matters is being with me. I think a big piece of this story comes down to Jesus is saying, in whatever you're doing in life, be present. You can be full on, steam ahead at work and be fully present with people. If you're a parent, you know full well it is easy to be with your children and not be present. It is easy, right? They're sitting there biting at that ankle, and you're like, what's that? Oh, it's my kid. Whoops, sorry. Didn't mean to do that. We can be distracted from the people that are around us. We can be distracted from our relationship with God. And it's not so much that Jesus is saying to Martha, don't work. He's saying, in whatever you're doing, avoid distraction. Pay attention to the thing that matters. So let's listen to the passage again in light of that, in light of being distracted from the presence of God or being fully attentive within his presence.
As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet listening to every word he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her to help me." "Martha, Martha," the Lord answered, "you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her."
So in a moment, we'll go participate in communion. You have 2 tables at the front, 2 at the back. On the sides of the stages, we have the gluten-free option for you as well. And before that, we're going to take a few moments to be completely quiet. And in the quiet, I'd like you to allow the Spirit of God to speak to you about distractions, about the things in life that are pulling your attention away from being fully present with God, fully present with others. Let him speak to you. Let him reveal to you right now an area that you might be less than present, and then make the commitment to say, it's not that I'm going to stop working. It's not that I'm going to just sit. Whatever I'm doing, I'm going to be fully present in that moment. Our servers are going to come now and receive the morning offering. And while they do, my normal sidekick is making up for a gap in his childhood. our family had a tendency to take vacations north and west and south and didn't do much in the east outside of western New York. And so Brian and Riley are on a little bit of a history trip this week. They did some time in Gettysburg and then Philadelphia, Washington, nice warm Washington week, and then are headed back, actually driving today to hopefully be here tomorrow. And so Blake is with us for the summer, serving as an intern, and I thought we'd find out a little bit about the Blake Over, as it's being called. You've got a few weeks of driving the car and not having anybody in the car telling you what to do or how to do it. So kids are meeting this afternoon, is my understanding. What's going on with that?
So we'll have our normal summer time of 12:30 to 2:30. We'll continue our series called FOMO. And then after that, we are going, or I guess later on in the day at 4:10, we'll be have the movie. We're going to the movies at the Juliet Cinemark in the mall, and that'll be $10. Money comes to me because I already paid for the tickets. If you've already told me, if you haven't not told me, you're kind of on your own on that part. But yeah.
So you're going to Lion King, is my understanding.
Yes,
right?
Lion King.
That'll be cool. That'll be fun.
Lion King.
And you get this early lesson, which I love, of being a youth pastor, that you pre-bought tickets and now they're not going to show up.
Right.
And you get stuck with a nice big bill. Good for you. Have fun with that. You can watch the movie several times. That'll be great. But no, you'll have fun. How about Wednesday? What's going on with junior high?
Yeah, so we're meeting at our normal time, 6:30 to 8:30, and it's going to be a Minute to Win It night. And also we're going to be continuing on that series, or finishing up that series called Legacy. So.
Good deal. And you'll be in a wedding this weekend too, right?
Yeah,
happens
so.
to be your sister that's getting married, so that's gonna be a fun day for us together. We're gonna sing right now a song that has become familiar to us, one that we love a lot, and I would love you to, as you get prepared mentally for this few moments of singing to God, to think in your life about something that is that has you in bondage, something that's holding you back, something that is keeping you from realizing every part of what God wants for you. Just kind of get that. Have that in your mind. Because God doesn't want it to be that way. He doesn't want it to be that way. You're a child of God. You are no longer a slave to sin or fear or anything else. You are a child of God. Let these words wash over you. Let God take away that area of bondage and bring you to renewed life. Let's stand together and sing.
to fear. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God.
You can have a seat. Let's keep unpacking that. So, started a series called Baggage. How do you see yourself? How do you see yourself? Do you identify yourself? Do you associate yourself with your baggage? Do you see your primary identity as associated with your baggage? The song is singing such tremendous truth. I'm not a slave to fear. I am a child of God. It is speaking absolute fundamental truth. If you are a Christ follower, you're a child of God, and that gives you freedom from fear. But for a lot of us, we tend to continue to identify ourselves in our life with our baggage. We look at who we were. We look at what we did in the past. We look at things that were done to us, whatever it might be, and we just kind of keep dragging this through life, and it's the thing that tends to hold us back. It's the thing that tends to hold us down from running the race the way we should run the race. I told you last week as we were looking at the development of this series that it was impacted by this verse from the book of Hebrews chapter 12, where he says we're surrounded by this great cloud of witnesses, and in order to run well, we've got to lay aside the sin that clings so closely to us, to get rid of the baggage that's holding us back. And that's where I planned to go with this series. I was looking at it and thinking, what's the baggage? What's the baggage that holds us back? But then as you think about this particular item, there's a transition that takes place. For a lot of us, baggage is something we lug along, but think about the opposite. When you're going on a trip, you want luggage. You need something to take with you on the journey when you get there. And what's beautiful about what God does to us when we become believers, hear me on this, He doesn't fundamentally change your personality. If you were sloppy the day before you were a believer, you'll probably be sloppy tomorrow, right? If you didn't have great attention to detail the day before you were a believer, you probably won't have great attention to detail tomorrow. It's part of your personality. But what God redeems are our sinful patterns, our sinful behaviors, the things that have been holding us back. And he says, you know, that thing that you think has been holding you back is actually the luggage I want you to use on your unique journey. There are things that have happened to you, there are things about your wiring that make you uniquely you. And God says, I love that about you, and I want to turn that into something that is actually incredibly usable for me as you live your life. A while back, we addressed something we called 4 metaphors. It comes from some teaching by Larry Crabb, who's a counselor and a Bible teacher. He was trying to identify the things that we do in life that try to make life work apart from God. We have things that we do that we say, I'm going to be my own God in this moment. And you know, for a lot of us, we look and we're like, yeah, I can identify that. I can see those areas where from time to time I grab the steering wheel, I decide I'm going to play God in my life. It's kind of funny. I think nice people generally think they don't do this. And the funny thing is kind of just the opposite, really. That when we're nice, when we think we're being nice, there's a way in which we're actually saying, God, I don't even need you for my goodness. I can handle this. I can do this on my own. And God's saying, Jesus says what? Apart from me, you can do nothing. And with me, you can do everything. And so he says, you got some baggage in your life, but I can turn that baggage into luggage. I can make that something that's usable as you go through this journey of life. So we looked at these 4 metaphors. The city builder, we looked at the city builder last week. This is a person that fundamentally in personality, they probably have a pretty entrepreneurial spirit. They're usually the person in charge of the project, in charge of the task. They see the problem. They get in on a quick fix. They're going to make things happen. That's their theme. I make things happen. And if they have a theme line, a phrase, it's I will. I will do this. I will be the one to power it out, to push through, steamroller, do what I've got to do. And what that city builder needs to hear when they're redeemed, when they're coming from a resourceful place, they need to hear the words of God to Abram in the book of Genesis chapter 12, where God says, I will bless you. I will make your name great. I will be the one to give you the land in which your family will live. I will be the one to do that. And so this redeemed, resourceful city builder is no longer muscling their way through life, fulfilling their own agenda, but instead they're saying, God, what do you want? And they realize God has wired them in such a way to fulfill His vision, to do the things that He desires in this world. Let me touch on the others quickly, because we're going to be taking a few weeks going through these, and I don't want you to be left wondering about all of them. We'll be talking about the whitewasher today, so I won't go into a lot about the whitewasher, but the whitewasher basically doesn't like to see problems, and so they spray perfume on it all. They make it all look good. They make it all smell good. They're pretty much, denial is a river for them. It's not a river for them. They constantly, they're into that denial thing. Well diggers are looking for satisfaction. They're looking to fill a void in their life. And they're looking to fill that void in their life in anything outside of God. And so they'll look to entertainment, they'll look to experiences, they'll look to anything, food, whatever. They'll look to all these things to try to fill the void, to try to fill the gap. Very often, the well digger will kind of tend toward addictive tendencies. They're out for fun. They're just looking for ways to find satisfaction. We're going to be holding off to the firelighter for last, and I love that because the firelighter wants to know. They need the information. They'd have felt a lot better if I'd have done them the first week, but I'm waiting to the end because it tortures them. They're like, okay, I get all that, but what about me? And they want to know all the details and all the facts, and boy, they struggle. They struggle big time when someone says, just trust me. You're going on vacation as a family, just trust me, I got this handled. Do you really? I don't know that you do. I don't know that I can trust you. And so information feeds that whole void in their life. And in their relationship with God, basically, they decide that they can't trust. They want to be the omniscient God. They want to remove all mystery from the equation. But here's the problem. Our God is a God of mystery. And life is full of mystery. And so they go crazy trying to figure out how to resolve the mystery. So we said last week, one of these four is probably you. If you sat through the city builder thing last week and went, you're probably not a city builder. It didn't tap you on the shoulder. What might have happened is you're driving home with somebody and said, so what'd you think of that city builder sermon? Sound like someone I know, yeah. Mm-hmm. So you're starting to recognize it maybe in others, but it hasn't hit you yet. One of these, you're gonna walk away and go, holy cow, he's got Alexa in my house. He knows what's going on. The thing we got to understand is we operate out of all of them. While one is our primary, we operate out of all of them in different seasons and different situations of our life. There are going to be times that life is just too hard and you're going to decide to pull out a big old bucket of whitewash. There are going to be times that something's important to you and you're going to city build. You're going to muscle through it apart from God. So we tend to dip into all of them, but there's one that is primarily you. So let's look at the whitewasher today. Whitewasher is pretty fascinating. I think this time through, as I've studied it more and thought about it more, thought about my experiences with whitewashers, I understand some things that are going on there a little bit better than I did before. When we look for the analogy of the whitewasher, we go to the book of Ezekiel. In Ezekiel, in the Old Testament, we just went through the Old Testament, so you're familiar with this. God has prophets that were sent to speak God's truth to the people. So he had a message he wanted delivered, and he'd say, I pick you, go talk to the king. And it was your job to go deliver the message. Now, let's face it, sometimes what you were doing is you were going to the king to say, everything you're doing is wrong. God is about to destroy the kingdom. And, you think about different world leaders receiving that kind of news, you'd probably get an official off with the head, done with you. It was a scary job as a prophet to speak the truth to power. And so a lot of prophets decided they liked job security and life security, so they only brought happy news to the king. They only brought the happy news. They were never, ever, ever going to deliver the hard truth. And in Ezekiel, God, through Ezekiel, sends a message to the prophets to say, you think you have security because you've been delivering the message you want to deliver, but I have a message I'm trying to deliver, and you're not being faithful to me. God says to the prophets who are not being faithful, because they lead my people astray, saying, peace where there is no peace. So, they're saying, oh, that tank over there, don't worry about that tank, that's just a food truck. No, there's a war about to come, right? Because they say peace where there is no peace, and because when a flimsy wall is built, they cover it with whitewash. Therefore, tell them who cover it with whitewash that it is going to fall. Rain will come in torrents. And I will send hailstones hurling down, and violent winds will burst forth. When the wall collapses, will the people not ask you, where is the whitewash you covered with it? And I will say to you, the wall is gone, and so are those who whitewashed it. Those prophets of Israel who prophesied to Jerusalem and saw visions of peace for her when there was no peace, declares the sovereign Lord. So trouble is on the horizon. Big time trouble. And these prophets, rather than saying, here's the truth of what God has to speak to us, say, don't worry about that. Don't look at the man behind the curtain. Everything's okay. Whitewashers attempt to hide structural problems with cosmetic solutions. Many summers ago, a friend that used to come to church here, Bob Morris. Bob Morris was a teacher over at Joliet Central. And so during the summer, one of the things he'd do is go paint houses. And he'd asked me to come paint a couple houses with him. And so we went one summer to paint a house in Homewood. And we arrived, and, you kind of start to get set up, you're inspecting it, and we're looking around, and we started doing a little bit of scraping, and what we realized as we scraped was that the paint that was still there was covering something that you could no longer call wood. It had kind of turned to sponge. It had been waterlogged. It was a really messed up situation. It was really bad. And, we went into the homeowner and we're like, there's some stuff that's got to happen here. I mean, this wood is rotting and it's not in great shape. And what do you want us to do? And she said, paint it. Paint it. I'm like, okay, we want to, this is going against everything in my being. You know what I mean? I want to know that what's under the paint is as good as the look of the paint itself. That spongy wood in about a year is going to flake off that paint, and we're going to be back to an ugly mess. But she just wanted it painted. She just wanted it covered. It didn't matter. She just wanted it to look good. Whitewashers attempt to hide structural problems with a cosmetic solution. Make it look good. Doesn't matter what's underneath. Doesn't matter what's there. Let's just make it look good. You come over to the New Testament, and Jesus uses the whitewash term once again. He says, woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees. When Jesus says woe to you, you're in trouble. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites who are like whitewashed tombs, which look beautiful on the outside, but on the inside they are full of the bones of the dead and everything unclean. In the same way, on the outside, you appear to people as righteous, but on the inside, you are full of hypocrisy and wickedness. And so, as you look at this, you're just kind of like, okay, what's the history behind whitewashing tombs? Why in the world would anybody throw whitewash on a tomb? We know that burial practices and the ways that a body is handled have been handled differently by so many cultures through so many different generations, all kinds of different ways. Even in our own culture, we've seen a change over the past century from graveyards with huge gravestones to just a flat slab to make it easy to mow, to now so many with cremation don't even necessarily take the body to a graveyard, but they might take it to a place that is special to the family. These traditions change over time. Not many traditions have changed in Jewish culture. One of the things that was true of Jewish culture then and is still today is that if you were to go to Israel, you would find that bodies are buried above the ground. The vault is on the ground instead of in the ground. So you have a crypt that's on top of the ground. And if you go to a Jewish cemetery, there's just all these boxes, stone boxes throughout the cemetery. In the times of Jesus, people had a tendency to bury people within a cave. When they found a cave, or even in the case of Jesus, we know that his cave was freshly cut out of the side of a mountain. And so bodies were placed in caves with a stone across them. When we went to Israel, we were kind of blown away one time. We're driving down the highway, and literally, from here to that suitcase over there on the side of the highway is a cave that serves as a grave, right there on the side of the road. So find a cave, that's where the body of my friend or my relative is going to go. Now think about this for a moment. The Jews are coming for Passover. They're coming on their Passover journey. And they want to come to Passover and they want to be ceremonially clean. They've made a long journey. They want to make sure that they're going to be able to participate in Passover. And one of the things that would make you ceremonially unclean was to come in contact with a dead body. So imagine you were one of the people walking along that highway and you decided to just go ahead and take a rest and lean yourself up against that cave. You would be ceremonially unclean for Passover. And so what they did, highway department would get out there and whitewash all the graves. They would make them as white could be so that you had a clear warning. There's a body inside of there. And if you go and if you touch that grave, you will be ceremonially unclean. And so as you look at that whitewashed grave, what it becomes, though it may look beautiful because it's white, it's a screaming sign. Don't touch this. Don't go here. Stay away. And Jesus was using that analogy to basically say that grave looks like one thing on the outside. It looks like a beautifully cleaned up cave. But on the inside, what you're going to find are dead man's bones. That's the analogy he uses for us of a whitewasher. Whitewashers can be masters of diversion, distraction, and decoy. They don't want to face hard truth. And so they do everything they can to cover it up. Much like the city builder, we have a list for you of some of the different characteristics of the people that would fall in the category of whitewasher. They tend to be self-conscious and insecure, careful, cautious, and calculated. They're always kind of thinking about appearances and about impressions. They'll tend to ask a lot, how is this going to look? How will it look if we this? How will it look if we that? Image really matters to them. They conform generally to what is expected, but not because they're great rule keepers. That's not the issue. They're chameleons. They want to blend in. They want to look like their surroundings. Of all the four that we're going to look at, they tend to be the greatest of people pleasers. They care about making sure that everybody is happy, and they tend to try to placate every personality involved. They're very conscious of not failing or letting others see their failure. They come across very often fully together, but they are insecure and afraid inside, though they appear to be composed and confident on the outside. They find it difficult to be vulnerable. They find it difficult to admit when they've been wrong. They want to cover that up. They can be very diplomatic in their speech. They say it very well, and they know the right words to say. They tend to placate. If you have a whitewasher in your family, this is probably a dynamic you will see. If you have multiple family members that are in conflict, the whitewasher is somehow friends with all of them, somehow able to keep the relationships going with all of them. And you'll kind of look and say, how can you do that? It's because they've mastered placating and sadly even at times lying. Their underlying issue is an issue of fear. The truth scares them. And you'll hear their key phrases, not going to be, I will, like the city builder. But I'm fine. You ask them how you doing, I'm fine. It's all okay. Or don't worry, it'll all work out. So we talked in the past about how this can be baggage, how this can be a problem. And even what I've presented today, you can start making logical connections and realizing that if you have somebody that never wants to confront the truth, we're going to have a problem. But that's not where we're going with this. What we're really asking is, how can that personality, how can that piece of who you are actually be luggage for your journey rather than baggage that holds you down? How can God redeem the part of you that doesn't want to face the truth and face the truth instead in a very resourceful way? So let's look first at how we move in our relationship with God from baggage to luggage. When I was growing up, the church I went to used King James Version of the Bible. You may have done the same as when you were a kid. And there were two words that our pastor said on a regular basis when he'd quote Jesus. Verily, verily. Verily, verily, I say unto thee, ye must be born again. Verily, verily. I had no clue what a verily was. And then as we get these more modern translations, we see Jesus changed his wording a little bit. Truly, truly, I say to you, you need to be born again. Or the New Living Translation, the one that we use, says, I tell you the truth. Jesus, it's amazing. The man who is the way, the truth, and the life would start his teaching often by saying, this is true. True statement here. Please listen to this. This is important for you to hear. This is the truth. Jesus wants us to have a close relationship with the truth as those who follow Jesus. Jesus says you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. The whitewasher fundamentally, as an unredeemed, non-resourceful person, does not believe that verse. They don't believe that verse. They do not believe there is freedom in truth. They think that when the truth is out there, there's going to be trouble. Someone's going to be mad. Something's going to go wrong. The truth is a problem. And so they whitewash over the things that they see. Jesus said to the people, to his disciples, I am the way, the truth. He didn't say, I am a truth, or I just speak truth. He says, I embody truth. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one can come to the Father except through me. Or in other words, no one can come to the Father if they don't come through the truth of Jesus and confront truth. I love the words of John as he's writing his epistle, the third epistle, when he says, I have no greater joy than to hear that my children are walking in the truth. Do you see what he's saying? That as believers, we're to be people who are on this constant journey of truthfulness. We don't avoid it. We don't evade it. We look at it. We see it for what it is. I love in Ronald Reagan's last address to the nation as president. He was talking about the relationship with Mikhail Gorbachev and with the Soviets, and he's talking about the fact that he'd like to see it proceed, but if we start to see problems, be wary. And at the end of that paragraph, he said, don't be afraid to see what you see. For a whitewasher, they're afraid to see what they see. They don't want to see the truth that they see, and so they interpret it in a different way. A redeemed whitewasher walks in the truth. Whitewashers have a tenuous relationship with the truth. They have a tough time with the truth. But here's what we know. Life is a series of invitations from God to truth. God is always inviting us along the way to walk in the truth, to tell the truth, to see the truth, to receive the truth, to live in the truth. He wants us to be people of truth because it's a reflection of His very character. A few years back, I received some teaching, and one of the ideas that was given to us in our prayer life was to ask this question of ourselves as we approach God in prayer. What's the truest thing I can say to God right now? If I were absolutely true about what's going on in my heart, if I were absolutely honest with God about what's happening inside of me, what's the truest thing I can say to God right now? An unredeemed, non-resourceful whitewasher does not answer that question truthfully. They come to God and say, I'm fine. It'll all work out. They have a hard time coming to Him in absolute brokenness. But that's what God wants from us. He wants us to hear that verily, verily, that truly, truly, that I'm speaking the truth to you right now. Will you learn to walk in the truth? How about the move from baggage to luggage within me? Because part of the area that we need to deal with this is our relationship with ourselves. This is something that I saw in a little different light this time. I think that as a person who is a firelighter, the personality that I probably have the most conflicted personality with, relationship with, is the whitewasher. Because the firelighter wants to know all the facts. And they just keep digging and digging and digging. And the whitewasher is like, I don't want to know any of them. If you would stop peeling back, we wouldn't have a problem. Leave it alone. So I really wrestled with what is it in the whitewasher that has a hard time just seeing the truth for what it is. As I've talked to whitewashers, here's what I've concluded. Whitewashers see the truth as harsh, as hurtful, as harmful, and as hateful. Somewhere along the line in life, someone used the truth on them as a baseball bat. Or they watched someone in life that just brutally, I just have to speak it, it's the truth, boom. No gentleness, no love, but it's the truth. And we speak truth, right? And they saw that harshness, and they saw that the hurt that came from that, and they made a determination, I'm not going to be that. Even in our own culture, we speak truth to people about sin, and what are we told? We're told we're hateful. And it's like, no, just the opposite. I speak truth because I love. I don't speak truth because I hate. I need you to know the truth because I love you. Paul wrote in Ephesians 4:15, instead, we speak the truth. How? We speak the truth in love. The two go together. You can't just blurt the truth and be hurtful, and you can't say that I'm going to be loving and withhold the truth. The two go together. And so the whitewasher within themselves has the opportunity to start to see that the truth does not have to be harsh. It does not have to be hurtful. It does not have to be harmful. It does not have to be hateful. And this is what I love. This is the emerging piece of the whitewasher, the redeemed, resourceful, life-giving whitewasher can choose the path of tender truthfulness. Now this person who for all of their life has not wanted to go there, and so they just plaster it with whitewash, instead can be the person that enters with a gentle spirit because they care about the other person. I'm not saying city builders don't care, but they have a fundamental steamroller personality, right? They're just going to roll. A couple bodies need to be squished in order to build this building. And the whitewasher is going to look and say, we don't do that. We can't do that. There's a tenderness about them, but what they have to realize is that withholding the truth is not love. They have the opportunity to speak the truth gently, persuasively, and beautifully, which, by the way, is exactly what Paul, Peter, and others, including Jesus, commend to us. That the truth is not a bat, but the truth is something that can be expressed in a winsome, attractive, and gentle way. So, let me just show you something really quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I had 8 more slides. And we're not going to look at them right now. All right? And firelighters are going, what? Give me $100, I'll send it to you later. Okay, let's stand. We'll close in prayer. Father God in heaven, it is my prayer that for those who live with a whitewasher, they would start to see them for someone, to start to see them as who they really are. That they're not a person who hates the truth. They're a person who has been hurt by the way someone else handled the truth. And that needs to be redeemed. There can be a resourceful side with this person who would rather slather whitewash on the problem. There can be a resourceful side that says, there's a truth that needs to be spoken. And I bring it to you with love. And I bring it to you with gentleness. I love you and I care about you. And I love and care about the truth. And they go hand in hand. And so I pray that you would give our whitewashers the opportunity to embrace courage, to overcome fear, to realize their status as a child of God, as one who accepted Jesus as the way, the truth, and the life, and to choose to walk in truth with gentleness and respect. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you so much for being with us today. See you next week.